All right. Well, I'm just getting logged in here. It's 12 o'clock Eastern. I'm sure we'll be getting some people jumping in here. So I'll be waiting for folks to hop in. But if you are joining and you log in, would love to hear who's joining. Feel free to pop in chat in the comments here. Let me know who's online. Um, where you're joining from would be great to hear. And I'll be getting started here in a second. All right. Well, I'm very excited about our topic today. Hopefully, as you're joining, feel free to chat in. Let me know where anybody's joining from. Hey, Dave. Thanks for popping in from North Carolina. Hope you're doing well. Um, Excited to share some thoughts on internal mobility. It's an area that I serve as an executive sponsor around internal mobility here at Hired Score, and I've been on a bit of a roadshow over the last 12 months talking about the topic, and it's relevant. I think for a lot of our customers. I'll even share a new report that Aptitude Research had released around some of the trends in internal mobility. It's an area our customers care deeply about. And we're hearing a lot of different themes on what's working, what's not working. Hired Score has taken some approaches in this, I certainly share, but overall, I'm also just going to talk about like what we're hearing in the market and certainly give you some ideas of how we're approaching it. But what's working, what's not working for our customers as they try and solve some of these internal mobility opportunities. So with that said, I'll dive in here, and if anybody else is joining, we're just getting started. So feel free to chat in. Let me know where you're joining from. I'd love to hear from the group. Anytime you're on these LinkedIn lives, you're talking into the air. So it's nice to see that there's there's people on the other side. All right. So a couple things, just the obvious why I'm in a position to talk about any of this. I'm the chief revenue officer here at Hired Score, so I support a lot of our existing clients and prospects as they consider opportunities in internal mobility. I think most of you know, but if you don't, Hired Score connects to all of the major ATS and HCMs, and now even some additional platforms like LXM and so forth. And so we see data and challenges across all of the ecosystems. What I can share with you is we support some of the largest companies in the world. So again, it doesn't matter what systems, combination of systems, challenges, we get to see sort of those permutations of where they are in their internal mobility journey. And it's a wide spectrum, as you can imagine. What I can tell you is our employers overall care deeply about their employees, as I'm sure many of you do, and they're excited about ways they can continue to unlock the value of the people who work for their companies. So that's what makes me excited about this topic, and certainly why I think we have some unique perspectives. We've studied a ton of data. So again, this is just giving you some of the aggregate numbers to let you know we have a perspective here that's looked at um, hundreds of millions of decisions, certainly millions of employees, and in this case, over 12 million internal hires across the customers as well. And the last thing I'll say about Hired Score, and then we'll really get into the challenges, is just our position as we look at this is really how do you take data across the systems? The challenge, a lot of the challenge of internal mobility is what I call like sort of historic wholly owned HR operating models. Even the classic example, if an employee wants to move at your company, they'll often say it's easier to get a job outside of our company than internally. Hey, Suzanne, thanks for joining. And so why is that the case? Again, it's not bad intention. We want to keep our employees, but think about it. An employee at your company, they may have to go to a unique internal site. They may or may not be able to use data that you have on them to apply. They typically sometimes have rules around how they can move. They often need to talk to different people, including their manager, maybe their HRP, to even get permission to look. So that's just a set of things, irregardless of which systems they are looking for those jobs in, whether they can find jobs, whether they can find upskilling opportunities, and then balance all of that against I think the skills journey many of the clients that I talk to every day are on, and variant versions of those. It's hard, and so that's why this model of how do you take data across all these systems so that everything we know about an employee can be used, whether it's helping them or helping people internally find new opportunities. And so that's really all we're up to here at Hired Score. I also did want to promote, there's a brand new study from Aptitude Research that I just looked at from Madeline Lorano and her team. And they're looking around, obviously surveying customers, getting feedback. I thought this was pretty fascinating. They talked about the key capabilities in one of their research sides here about capabilities for internal mobility. And what they talked about were what did customers respond saying they were asking for or looking to add in terms of capabilities. Upskilling, reskilling was the number one, helping employees find the right opportunities, connecting internal talent with relevant learning, communicating to employees, one-on-one to communications about employees' future, and effective employee comms practices. Interesting, by the way, that communication showed up so much. Hey, Ashley, thanks for joining. Communication showed up so much as an opportunity. And my guess is this is showing up on a lot of these employee scorecards as well, in employee surveys that people are doing when asking employees how they feel about finding opportunities. And again, that simple statement of it's still easier to find jobs outside of our company, right? The good news is HiredScore will talk about a lot of the different things customers can do to easily gain wins in some of these areas. And I will say it's a journey. So like the skills journey most of our customers are on is a multi-year journey. It's complex and it's a great journey to go on. But we're going to talk about some simple, easy wins that you can get, even solving in 3 or 4 of these categories right off the bat that drive that proactive side of things. Okay, so what do I mean by proactive employee engagement? This is solving for those job connections. It's solving for some of the communication we talked about. So what this really is talking about is looking at what ingredients are necessary to communicate with employees in a high fidelity way, where there's trust, there's accuracy, and we remove friction. So these are kind of the design principles that we want to engage in and look at together. So the first is we're trying to remove friction for employees. Now, removing friction is how do you balance how much data you need an employee to give them in order to match them to something or to make a recommendation for them, find a new opportunity, eventually recommend learning or whatever it is. If the employees constantly need to giving you their internal LinkedIn every day so that you can still match them, that's where our customers struggle. And so one of the data points I think is fascinating is where employers have created like internal marketplaces, talent marketplaces, employee profiles. On average, right now, across all that data I showed you, less than 10% of employees are proactively engaging with that, which means that if they're only going there sporadically, and to the extent they do, when they do go there, that's the only time you're getting new information. It means by definition, your ability to engage those employees is limited. The second thing is these efforts should complement your existing employee data and HCM investments. This isn't to say that any of the vendors are doing anything wrong, but where I am always sensitive is where the solution needs to be to buy another marketplace or another database. We're really sensitive to data islands. I will say a lot of the HCM systems you probably already own have deep opportunities to turn on functionality for your employees. I would look at those because you already have those systems. And then as you need to add on to it, great, but make sure it's solving a specific use case and that you're not creating another data island, because it's just going to create more friction to drive the things that you want. Third thing is meet employees where they are. One of the things we found in all of our testing, and I'll show you an example of this, is when you can actually deliver a recommendation through something like Teams or Slack or any of these collaboration platforms where employees are working, you can get a much more natural response, a much higher response rate, because you're already engaging employees where they are, which is a really big deal. And the fourth thing here is earning employee trust, which means that if you are going to make recommendations and you are going to show them something that's an opportunity, you have to be ensured that if they then say, yes, I'm interested, that it's going to be something they're interested in, that they're qualified for, they could move, and it's going to deliver a good experience. We've all gotten those, age-old LinkedIn recommendations where we're like, this isn't a very good recommendation. So you really have to be careful. These recommendations are high fidelity. Um, I see a question from Bob. What about passive data collection to complement what the employee provides? So, Bob, totally. And you'll see what we're talking about here is where you can collectively pass data. But the big sensitive thing that we've learned, at least in the Fortune customers we work with, is where do you get that data? And it's not just where do you get that data, but it's that data is permitted by the employee to be used. So, for instance, if you're scraping public databases to enhance something about an employee, that could be a no-no. A lot of our customers, for instance, also care about opt-ins, so the employees can even be, are saying they want to be considered for some of these things. So that there's a whole sensitivity around privacy. Obviously, follow all guidance and make sure that meets privacy requirements. There are vendors that do it, Bob. So I'm not saying it's not possible. HiredScore in particular follows legal guidance around privacy, which is we don't scrape any data that isn't permitted by the individual to be in your system. But what I am going to show you right now is there's actually a rich amount of information that are already in a lot of your systems about your people that we don't think of as fair game. And it is permitted and it is enhanceable in the format you're talking about. So, for instance, the ATS is a rich source of employee information. We wouldn't think of that, but why is that? Well, think of this. Every employee in that system applied at one time. Now, again, depending on how new your ATS is, there'll be caveats here. If you just implemented your Workday or your Success Factors 3 years ago, right, you're not going to have people that are 7 years old. Granted, but you are going to have everybody that applied and has been hired in the last couple of years. You're also going to have any employees who have applied for new jobs during that time because they've expressed interest and raised their hand. So that's going to give you some coverage of rich information right off the bat that people don't think of because employees have provided, resumes, CVs, information in that database. In addition, what HiredScore does is we activate your core HCM data. What is the core HCM data? That's everything from, and every company has different names for these. It's Success Factors, it's Employee Central, and Workday. They have a Career Hub and Talent Card, and they're all different names. So, irregardless, we're pulling across these different platforms to say what data do we have about an employee that's already contributed. So if they have updated that profile, we can grab that. But even their basic retention data tells a truly amazing story. We know what role they're in. We know how long they've been in that role, what division, what cost center. And any basic data can tell us that, and we can formalize that. So we're able to actually we found at companies who had employees for 20 to 30 years, we're able to build a profile and understanding of that employee, even things that you wouldn't think of, Bob, like employee ratings. So their performance ratings, how long they've been enrolled. These are all things that we'll talk about in the matching here. Now, what we do is we focus on delivering high value employee profiles using mobility rules for open jobs. So I will clarify, at least in the first version of this, we're not focused on career coaching in terms of where you could go. It is about supply and demand. What do we have today that the employee could move to and would be excited to move to and would be qualified for? So that is an important caveat, but you'll see in future versions, what we start to contemplate are things like projects, courses and training, career planning. Today, jobs is key because we can move an employee. And if you look at that survey feedback from Aptitude, that's still the area where employees are frustrated. I still can't find the jobs I'm qualified for, even at your own company. And the big difference in our approach with orchestration without is we're going and meeting the employee. We're not waiting for them to come to the talent marketplace or come to the thing and update information. We're going to go ahead and reach out. So let me show you how this all works and welcome any questions. Cool. Okay. So what we have here is sort of a journey for an employee. And let me see, actually, it looks like it's not sharing. So give me 1 minute. I think you're still seeing my my other screen. Give me 1 second. Stop. Let me go ahead and try that again. All right, we should be good. Okay. So, and Bob, I see what your point was. You were looking at other platforms like L&D, performance management. Yeah. So absolutely. Anything that's within that walled thing called it's employee permissible and it's within a company's data structure, we're happy to look at it. So anything across those for sure. And obviously the one caveat is they have to have, modern APIs that, you can pull from and leverage that data. But otherwise, definitely all fair game for sure. Okay, so we're going to look at Gemma. Gemma is a individual who works at one of your companies and is open for opportunities. Okay, so what we're doing first of all is we're meeting Gemma where they are, which is right in their own Teams environment. So this is an employee. They don't have to authenticate. They don't have to log in. They already have, in this case, a Microsoft Teams environment. So we've contacted Gemma to say, hey, Gemma, we've noticed you and we've noticed your work and dedication. These are things we configure in the messaging, but we're reaching out to say, hey, there's some exciting opportunities here. Now, notice what we're also reminding Gemma in this case is that we understand a few things. A, that they would be interested in this role. What do I mean interested? So we look at things like, what job level and band are they in? And we're only going to show them jobs that are either horizontal or 1 or 2 levels. That's company configurable. The company controls that. So you're not showing them jobs they couldn't move to, or it would be a demotion. Second, we're looking at their qualifications, right? So they have to be able to move to the job that we're suggesting. And that's where, for those of you who don't know, we have a rich AI layer behind that's doing that background matching. And then we also, because we're connected to all the data flows within these systems, we can look at the statuses to say, is this rec too far advanced? In other words, don't show an employee, even if they're highly qualified and would be interested, in a job that's about to have an offer tomorrow, because you're probably just going to lead that employee to a bad, frustrating situation. Because they get excited, they apply, and then tomorrow they get a notice the job's closed and you've hired somebody. Bad experience, right? So I call that too far baked. Let's not show them jobs that are too far baked. The other thing that we can put in here is any rules layers. So if you have requirements of how long somebody has to be in role, if there's performance requirements, we have some employers that are, some of them may even be joining, that have some pretty aggressive mobility goals for the companies and are willing to, remove those roles. No problem if you do, but if you have them, they can certainly be built in here. Okay, which means that Gemma is only going to get jobs shown to them that they are qualified for, they meet the mobility rules and requirements if you have them, that they would be interested in and within job band levels, and the jobs are kind of in that ripe stage for a new applicant. Okay. What we're doing is we're showing Gemma 2 jobs, product marketing manager. We've got these cool little AI insights that tell them if they're qualified. And it's configurable. We can show them how far the job is along. This is important because employees want to know that they're not, putting their hat in a ring where there's 300 people on there sometimes. We also pull through the data right from your ATS, so they don't have to now bounce over to the ATS to look at the job. We've got the job description there, and right from here, they can apply to the job. So if they click that button, they can finish the application process. In this example, I'm showing you a Workday example. We're, again, system agnostic, so Gemma can finish the application process right there. So in this case, we've connected them to a high-quality opportunity. They've applied and already back in Workday, in this case, in the ATS. Here, product marketing manager, in this case, maybe they reviewed this one, less interested in this job, no problem. We also learn from this feedback. Here's a really cool example of if you are investing in things like a career hub, talent marketplace, other vendors, no problem. A lot of those, if you do have them, we want to drive value back to those systems. So the other thing we can do here naturally is, instead of asking the employee to come out and update the things, as we're engaging them, we can ask if there's any new information they might want to share. Maybe there's a new location, maybe they're open to reload, maybe there's new skills they'd want to share. So we can also use this as a data journey to add data back to the HCM systems or the talent marketplaces and make sure we're increasing the value of those systems. One of the other interesting things we find is sometimes when you engage people, maybe they're not interested here, but it gets their interest perked, and maybe they want to go to your career hub to look for projects, or they want to look for coaching opportunities or learning opportunities. In future versions of this, you can see how HiredScore could easily add in learning and other things to this journey, but just give you an idea of how this is supported. Okay, if I click this history button, what I'm seeing here is a list of the jobs the employee's been engaged. So again, back to that employee transparency. Remember, we heard in that thing, employees want to be communicated with, right? So they want to know how they're doing. They want to know where they are. They want to understand permutations of what happens if they get rejected, right? So these are the things we're thinking about. Not just did we make a recommendation, but what's that holistic employee journey? Which brings me to the next part of HiredScore. One of the things that happens is you connect an employee to a great job, you have to make sure your recruiters, your hiring managers and even other people like their current manager are in that loop. So when certain things happen, that great employee doesn't get missed. So what HiredScore can do in some of these journeys, I'm just going to skip ahead from a redeployment use case, is we can even remind our recruiters to make sure they prioritize those high value employees that just appeared. Make sure we pull in any relevant data. Again, here's that HCM data with the manager ratings, even history on that employee. So in case they're applying to other jobs as well, that's a good signal that employees probably, if they're not moving internally, they may be moving externally because they're applying to lots of jobs. So that's a good signal as well. And we're able to move that employee right through in the process to the next step. So that's the normal HiredScore layer. If you don't know more about HiredScore and want to learn, just let us know. But that's what that's supporting. Now we can even remind the hiring manager. So again, we're nurturing through each step of the orchestration the right people at the right time who need to do something relative to this. So we're even letting the hiring manager know about this great employee. They can give feedback on them, update that. Again, all flowing back to the ATS in real time. I'm not spending a lot of time here for the purpose of a call. That's not what this is about. But I did want to talk about that we keep going. So we're not going to stop just at did the employee get recommended and did people look at them, but we want to understand all the funnel fall off points. So one for instance, great examples, we want to be sensitive to how many recommendations per employee. Are they getting moved? And even, by the way, where an employee applied, made it to an interview and then got rejected, that's a really important coaching opportunity. That could be an opportunity to notify their manager, for instance, and say, hey, you might want to chat with Peter. It just expressed interest, apply for the job, and it didn't get it. So maybe a coaching opportunity. Maybe there's some learning that Peter could be taken based on whatever feedback on why he didn't get the job. So you start to look at these different opportunities within the platform as well in terms of how you think of employees holistically throughout that process. One other cool thing that you can do with this is sometimes maybe at certain companies, we don't want to just enable the employee. We want to enable people around the employee. So this is an example of how we can use that same experience to engage. It could be a career advisor. Maybe it's their manager. Maybe it's the HRBP. In this case, Daniel is somebody at their company. And what we can do with that person is we can have them search an employee. So here's Sandra Miller that they like. Once they find that employee, they can review those roles that we just looked at, send an employee, send a manager, review the job, not relevant. And then what they can do is they can make a decision to send that to the employee if they want to. So in this moderated version, rather than the bot reaching out to Gemma or whomever directly, there's a moderator in between that looking on behalf of the employee. And so in that case, what happens is Sandra, who's the employee, is now getting a notification that Daniel, their career advisor, whomever this is, has thought of them and found a position they might be interested in. Same flow as before, we're pulling in that process, but we're starting to help interact with individuals that may be thinking of looking at employees across your organization as well. So just giving you some of the ways that these things can be interacted with, moderated across that journey also. So I would love to open it up. I know we're at 20 minutes here. I focused on a lot of ways, but the kind of the moral of the story is that what's working for our customers and why we've developed these is that we want to help connect employees to high value opportunities. We don't want employees to have to always add more data to make that happen. And we want to support the holistic data strategy. But I'd love to hear from the audience, any particular challenges you've seen in your programs, anything that you had questions on what's working for employers. Happy to consider any Q&A if there's any from the group as well. Feel free to chat in. I'll stop sharing here. One thing I did want to share, what we do see when employers are able to leverage some of this is that generally the response rate is incredibly high. So far, 2 out of 3 employees who receive recommendations will engage with them because they're so high quality. 64% so far are applying to a job, and it can either be a job that we recommended or a job that they then went to the career site. So again, from an attribution standpoint, we're just focused on are they doing something that's net positive? And then so far, 12% of match applicants who click on the recommended job one of the specific jobs have been hired as well. So from a conversion rate, really high results where we're deploying these. Primary use cases for this are, opportunities to grow, redeployment right now, but there's lots of great uses as you can start to think about things across the spectrum as well. So for those joining, welcome any questions, any thoughts related to what's working, what's not working for our employers. I don't see any comments coming in, so I'll give it another minute or two, and I'll probably end up wrapping up for everybody. All right. Well, for those who joined, thanks for giving me some of your time. It was great to share with you a little bit about how we're looking at this, what's working. I know internal mobility isn't easy, but it's a great investment for companies, and obviously your employees are one of your greatest assets. So continue to invest is important no matter what you're doing. Dave asks, curious if you notice any trends for companies focusing on the new employees less than 12 months in role and how they approach mobility. So Dave, this is actually a great question. I think there are a bunch of flavors that I see, and they range. There's actually a customer, I think, who's joining on this call, who's even CO and CHRO have talked about, getting rid of the traditional mobility standards, which means if somebody's there for 2 weeks, they can still look for new jobs. So I think the first question is, do the mobility standards, do those apply to the newer talents that are new to your organization? In other words, do they have to accrue time and build internal credibility before they can move? So that's an important question, I think, to answer and revisit. Even some of those policies sometimes are 5-10 years old. So taking a look at that is really important. The other thing I've seen, as people come to a company, they apply to a job, they interview, and then they get in the company and learn. Sometimes just like a candidate isn't a bad, they're not all a bad fit for the role for the company, but they apply to the wrong role for them. Sometimes they end up in, the wrong job for them. And so, as they start to think about opportunities, but they're a great fit for your company, I've seen customers we work with do some really cool things with some of their upskilling, reskilling programs. So one of our customers, for instance, any employee at the company can apply for an engineering program where if they want to, forego their role, they can, opt into this engineering program. It's self-serving for the company because the company needs more engineers, but in doing so, they can become an engineer with the company. And that gives them a chance to try on that new job, and they get all the training and requisite, but they're sort of vacating their current roles, so to speak. I've heard of other things, upskilling. We have one customer who's really focused on specific skills that they need to provide to their customers. And so they've actually worked with underrepresented groups to do certification courses to get them those skills. And that's an area where, again, for newer talent, for maybe more difficult talent areas, they're focused on that because that benefits them, it benefits their customers, and obviously it benefits the new talents. So I think in general, where customers have said, the new talents, looking at that onboarding experience, looking at that L&D experience, those are particularly important to make sure. I think one of the emphasis is how do you make sure those new employees become net positive? Like what's that time to value for the employees? So from a mobility perspective, they can start to think about how their skills grow and how they continue to add value to the company. Those are a couple of things I've heard a lot about. I'm happy to put you in touch with customers, Dave, who are on those different journeys. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question specifically, but those are some ideas that kind of popped to my mind. Any others? Great. Well, if anybody has any questions, by the way, feel free to follow up with me directly. I'll put my email. You can message me on LinkedIn. I'm also just jason@hiredscore.com. So feel free to shoot me a note there. And happy to follow up, connect you with customers who are on those journeys, or answer any other questions about this. So, all right. Well, thank you for your time today. Hope it's a great Wednesday for everyone, and appreciate the time. Bye.